North Carolina's most vulnerable.
We looked at each other and we broke down and started crying. Both of us.
Retirees and people on disability plunged into debt.
I can't pay back $240,000.
I was like, what has just happened? I'm like, our whole life has just fallen apart.
By the very agency tasked with helping them, the North Carolina Treasurer's Department. Tonight, we hear from the victims. Who do you think's at fault here?
I think they are, because of the fact that they're supposed to be the experts. They're trained. They do this every day.
And their advocates.
They put these people through this for no reason.
This is On the Record. Retirees wronged. I'm 5 on your side's Keely Arthur. Thanks for joining us for On the Record. For months, we've been reporting on retirees wronged by the state and sent into tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. So much money mishandled, so many people's lives changed. Tonight, we'll talk to new people impacted by this problem and look at new legislation passed following our reporting. Let's begin with the woman who first brought this to our attention, Penny Glenn.
There's always something to do in the kitchen.
Even in grief, Penny Glenn makes sure everyone else is okay.
Can I offer you something to drink?
She keeps reminders of her beloved husband, Joseph, everywhere, even in the place settings.
I would decorate it at Christmas.
The memories provide relief, an occasional smile.
I was with him for over 40 years.
Joe is with Penny still, only now he rests in an urn in the kitchen.
He was my best friend. He took care of me and he loved me. I don't want to cry on camera. This is difficult. This is difficult.
Difficult not only because of the loss, difficult because of how Penny and Glenn spent the last of their 40 years together.
I hope nobody don't never have to go through what I've been through.
Let's rewind to 1996. Joe retired. He worked for the city as a heavy machinery worker, doing the dirty work which kept Raleigh running.
I seen him in knee-deep or more water, cold ice water, repairing water mains.
For years, the Glenns received letter after letter from the state's Retirement Systems Division, telling them what their payout was and that it was accurate. Then in 2018, another letter, this one, shattered everything. It told the Glenns there'd been a mistake and that for 17 years, the state had overpaid them more than $241,000. And now Joe and Penny had to pay every cent back.
I read it to him. We looked at each other and we broke down and started crying. Both of us. He said, baby, what am I gonna do? I can't pay back $240,000. I didn't even know that they were overpaying me.
You know, I wish I wasn't doing this interview.
State Treasurer Dale Falwell. Walk me through. 5 on your side wanted to know how families could possibly know their payout was incorrect when they were reassured by the state that their payouts were correct.
Sure. That's a great point. But the dates that you mentioned are what we call pre-Dale, because I wasn't the treasurer then.
By pre-Dale, he means a previous administration when Treasurer Richard Moore was in office and the error occurred. Falwell said he had no choice but to go after the money. He told us the state retirement fund is worth $114 billion. And right now, 1 million North Carolinians are on the plan. To put that into perspective, the Glenn's debt is worth about 25 cents to every person on the plan. In other words, the $240,000 is a drop in the bucket for the state, but for the Glenns, it was everything.
I said, he won't never live to pay that back.
What did they say?
She said, well, we'll take it as long as we can.
And they did. Joe didn't hire a lawyer. He didn't look for a way out. The Glenns filed for bankruptcy.
Can you think of a man at 80 years old going back to work?
Joe Glenn in his 80s went to work to pay an impossible debt by delivering parts for O'Reilly Auto.
In so many instances, there will be tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars on any one case that we cannot collect because, the person has aged out.
They've died?
Yes.
For all of his effort, Joe managed to pay back $4,976.17 before dying in June of last year.
In loving memory, Joseph Glenn.
But even in death, the state found a way to collect a little more. Joe's pension provided money for his funeral. It was $10,000. The state took that too, leaving Penny to pay for it herself.
Knowing that I'm not able to pay for it now, but because of somebody else's error, that breaks my heart.
This is the man who stitched it up.
It's about taking care of people.
Ramil Ferguson. He owns RM Ferguson Funeral Home. And when he heard the story, he donated the service. Why did you decide to help Penny?
I mean, she was willing to come here and sweep and mop, and I'll come clean up. What do you need? A woman at her age should be enjoying her years, not trying to worry about paying off a debt.
It was a show of grace and kindness that Joe never lived to see.
We loved each other.
In May, after we alerted the treasurer to our investigation, North Carolina Treasurer Dale Falwell announced his support of House Bill 201, which he said would make recouping on overpayments more reasonable and flexible. 5 on Your Side took a hard look at the language of the bill and consulted with attorneys familiar with recoupment and found that to be misleading. You see, the way the state gets the money it overpaid back is often by taking money out of retirees' monthly pensions. The original language of 201 made it so they would not take less than 25% of a recurring monthly benefit. In other words, at least 25% of the monthly benefit. 5 on Your Side obtained documents proving they already had settled payment plans for far less than 25% a month. We pointed this out to lawmakers who took issue with it during a Senate debate. This is an audio recording of a portion of that discussion.
As you can imagine, some retirees only being limited on a fixed income, having to pay 25% of their monthly benefit is extremely high.
The next day, a major change to the bill was made. It amended the language so the state could recoup no more than 25% each month. In other words, it created a ceiling rather than a floor. What is still unclear is if this will only help future victims of overpayment or also the people already paying back. We interviewed one woman who is currently paying back 100% of her pension each month. She says when she called the Treasurer's Department to ask if she could negotiate it down, she was told they weren't aware of this law change. We talked to her about her situation earlier this week. I have here with me Vicki Stickle. Vicki, you are a person that has essentially been victimized by the Treasurer's Department's recoupment process. So you worked in Johnston County schools for 16 years. Explain to me what kind of work you did there.
I was a cafeteria manager, and I made sure that the state records and everything were up to date. I had a staff, and we cooked meals for the children.
It's an important job, and you suffered an on-the-job injury, you said. I did. Explain what happened.
We had a delivery come in, and I tossed a box, and it just blew my back.
And that was kind of it?
Yes.
After that, you had the peace of mind knowing that you couldn't go back to work, that at least you were going to be able to get some money through the state on disability.
Yes.
Was that a life raft for you?
It helped. It helped because it was going, at least there was something coming in instead of nothing coming in.
You said roughly $1,500 a month you were receiving through the state's disability program. And one day you received a letter telling you that you had been overpaid, and not only were you going to lose your benefit, but you were on the hook for a huge amount of money. How much was it?
Over $36,000.
What was your emotional state when you found out that you were on the hook for owing so much money through no fault of your own?
I cried, and then I called the state.
What did they say to you?
Well, the poor guy on the phone, I was so hysterical, And I told him, I said, you know, this is not right. You can't do this to people. And I said, my opinion was, if you think you're the best retirement system, I said, no, you're not. I said, because you're doing this to people, and this is just not right. This is just not right.
So the state, as a way to pay themselves back, takes what you would receive in disability and basically gobbles that up and throws it to the balance that you're owed. Is that correct?
Yes.
There was a law that just passed that said that now the state can't take any more than 25% of whatever that monthly payout is. You called the Treasurer's Department to ask about that. What did they tell you?
They said they had no knowledge of it, and that they reminded me that I owed $36,000 and change, and they were taking $344 a month back, so to help recoup that overpayment.
How do you feel about things now? Are you sad? Are you frustrated? You now know that you are one of many.
It's good to know that I'm not the only one, but it's sad to know that all these people owe all this money and they can't. What happens if they have no other income? How are they going to pay their bills?
I think a lot of people have been faced with that question and that reality. For a skeptic watching this who says, look, you were overpaid and that money should have never gone to you anyway, what do you have to say to them?
They should let people know ahead of time what's going to happen. Yeah, we did get a letter. Okay, fine. But they should let people know how they came up with that number and how it would affect others. This is not our fault. We did not do this.
Yeah, you're right. Whose fault is it?
It's the state's.
And in a perfect world, how do you think they should handle this for retirees and people on disability like you?
My question is, how come it's continuing to pop up? That's my question.
Vicki, we really appreciate you telling your story, and we are with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just ahead, we speak to another victim, a former teacher live, living on disability, forced back into work after the state told her she was overpaid $150,000, how she is trying to pay it all back after the break. Welcome back. We are interviewing victims of the North Carolina State Treasurer's Department who were overpaid in disability or retirement for years, relatively small amounts of money each month, then snowballed into huge debts. I have here with me another victim, Kelly McCracken. Kelly, you were an educator in multiple counties for many years. Went on disability. Why did you go on disability?
I have chronic migraines, so I was not able to continue teaching health and physical education.
Yeah, that'll do it. And you filled out the paperwork not knowing if you were going to be approved for disability, right. But you were.
Yes, I was finally approved and was very relieved just to know that, have that peace of mind.
How long were you on disability for?
I was on disability for about 7 years, yes.
And then you got a letter, and explain to me what that letter said.
Said that I got the letter in 2021, and it said that I owed back $154,000. And I thought, yeah, this has to be a mistake. And it wasn't.
It wasn't?
It was not.
And you are currently on the hook for that amount of money?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
I want to ask you what I asked Vicki, the woman we had interviewed before the break. For people saying, look, you were overpaid. It was never your money to begin with. What do you say to that? You had really no understanding that this was incorrect.
Right, and I agree. I don't want to take something that's not mine. However, when you're sick, your focus is on the illness and trying to get better, and you trust the decisions that have been made that have taken a long time to make, and you trust that they're right.
And in this case, they weren't.
No, they weren't.
Where do you think the error came from? And what do you think the people who were responsible for making that mistake, how should they be reprimanded?
That's a loaded question, because I don't know if they can be reprimanded that's equivalent to what I'm having to go through. I'm having to pay back all this money, and they're probably still working, still have a job, probably know nothing was done to them. And that's, in any other job, if you make that big of a mistake, there's serious repercussions.
The state pension plan is $114 billion strong. I want people to understand that it's not only retirement for public employees, but also people on disability like yourself. $114 billion, a lot of money.
Yes,
$154,000 for one person is also a lot of money. Yes. When you live your day-to-day life, is that amount that you still owe always kind of in the background?
Absolutely. Yeah, anytime I go make a purchase, it's like, do I really need to do this?
You've watched a lot of our coverage on this.
Yes.
I know you called your father after you heard Penny's story.
Yes.
And were you relieved to hear that other people were like this? And did you know?
I did not know. I was relieved to know that I was not the only one in the boat, but it hurt me to know that other people were in that boat as well.
You thought the letter was a mistake. You learned that it wasn't.
Yeah.
And what was your dialogue with the Treasurer's Department like?
There really wasn't a whole lot of dialogue. It was, you owe this money, and that's pretty much it. There wasn't much dialogue.
The state was tasked with approving you, giving you the right amount of money, and in exchange for the service you had given the state.
Right.
Do you think there needs to be more of an audit on the department itself? Do you think people who are receiving retirement and disability can trust it? I know you certainly did.
I did. There definitely does need to be some more oversight of these decisions that are being made that are putting out a lot of money to their employees and other people.
Where do you go from here? Do you just, I know you're back working?
Yes, just keep working and paying back every month.
Well, we thank you for your candor.
Absolutely.
I thank you for your time, and we hope that you can get to a point where this isn't the dark cloud over your head.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, coming up, we're going to hear from a candidate for state treasurer about what he thinks needs to happen next so that more people are not ending up like Kelly. Welcome back to On the Record. We've been talking about retirees wronged by the state out of tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars because of mistakes the state treasurer's office made. Earlier, I had the chance to speak with Representative Wesley Harris. He's running for state treasurer in 2024. I asked him what he believes needs to happen moving forward to make sure more overpayment mistakes are not made.
The first thing is to figure out what happened and make sure that doesn't happen again. Like that is the first thing. Go back, audit these past years of, I think it was like at least 17 years ago from, what was it, 2001 I think it started, so 2018 was when it started. So go back, find out what happened, what caused this, and the first thing, just prevent this from happening. Second thing is, I don't think a retiree should be on the hook for something that is a mistake from a state bureaucrat or a state elected official. And when we're looking at the size of this money, again, I think it was about $6 million over this time period. We have over $4 billion in unreserved balance, and this legislature has been doling out more money than that in port projects every single year. And so when we're able to do that, when we're not giving them raises that even keep pace with inflation, when we're not giving them cost of living adjustments for their pension to keep pace with inflation, to then come back to them and put them on the hook for a mistake that the state government made is ridiculous. The state should be responsible for that, and the state should be able to fill this hole back and do whatever it takes to make sure that this mistake doesn't happen again. But to come back and punish the retirees for this is ridiculous in my opinion. And I know there's laws on the books that we should change. I know the law we just passed a few months ago to, I think, cap it at 25% of the benefit, but there's still a minimum of 8.5%, and that's ridiculous in itself too. Again, we're punishing the wrong people, and we're requiring the wrong people to pay for mistakes of the state government.
Yeah, I think the Retirement Systems Division manages a pension fund of $114 billion. And so the 140 kind of average, 140,000 average that we've seen people have to pay back is a drop in the bucket compared to the overall budget. You're saying that if you were elected, you wouldn't put the onus on the retirees, and you feel like there's money available to be able to alleviate this.
Yeah, there's certainly money to help out our retirees. And like I said, we're pigeonholed a little bit by current legislation. And so in the current position, I would do what it takes to make sure that they can renegotiate. And until we could change the law, make sure it has as minimal result on their level of retirement as possible. And then pressure my colleagues in this building, in the legislature, to make sure that something like this can't happen again. Because like I said, $6 million in a yearly budget of $33 billion is nothing. $146,000 for someone that's living on fixed income retiring is the world. That's the end of the world. I can't imagine being on retirement and then getting a bill like that from the state government that I trusted to do everything.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, and I think everyone we've interviewed who was in that boat has that sentiment. The last thing I want to ask you is, we know that the law, as you just referenced, was passed creating essentially a ceiling. You can't take more than 25% a month to pay back whatever the debt is owed. We interviewed a victim, if you will, of all of this today, who is paying 100% of her pension. She called the department to say, hey, now that this law's passed, can I only have 25% taken? And they said, we didn't hear about the law. How do you make sure, as a publicly elected official, that what's been passed is being communicated?
Right, and that's a critical piece, and that's why stories like this are so important, because we need to, I haven't had any of my constituents reach out and say they've been victims of this, but if they had, that would be the first thing I would do, is reach out to them and say, hey, we just passed this, and then also reach out to the treasurer's office and say, hey, we just passed this law. This is state law now, and so we need to make sure that those benefits of whatever laws we're passing are getting out to the people so that they know what's there, because people need to know their rights, because just like the state government can take advantage of people just like anyone else, and so people need to know what protections they have. Because again, if our leaders don't know what protections are out there for our constituents, our constituents probably aren't going to know either. And so it's incredible that we got to be able to do this.
Representative Harris, thank you so much for speaking with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
We reached out to the two other candidates running for state treasurer, North Carolina State Representative John Bradford out of Mecklenburg and Guilford County Commissioner James Upchurch. About the topic, both declined to comment. We've also asked current state treasurer Dale Falwell, who is running for governor, to talk to us today. His team did not respond. They've declined several requests for interviews throughout this investigation. If you are impacted by this problem or have another story to share, call the number on your screen or email callkeely@WRAL.com. And if you have something to say about tonight's discussion, follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/WRAL or email us your comments, questions, or criticisms on the record at WRAL.com. Thank you.